Hi friends, this is Marilyn from TarotClarity.com, and today's video is a side-by-side comparison between the Tarot Classic 1974 by A.G. Müller Schaffhouse and the more recent release by Yves Renaud of the Francois Gassmann Tarot from 1840. It is surmised that it is known that the Tarot Classic was based upon the Gassmann. I've always liked the Tarot Classic deck, and it's a little bit on the quirky side, and I know it was not exactly correctly done, because after all, we have words like the Magician and the High Priestess and the Hierophant in place of their correct words. But I always liked it because it had a quirkiness about it. I think especially in regards to the color. It seems as though although they honored the structure of the Tarot de Marseille, despite the renaming of a few of the cards, they took liberties with color, and I just always liked it. And I was hoping to see if the Gassmann from 1840 had done the same thing, if they had taken risks with the color. Now, bear in mind that the Gassmann had been reproduced a few times with a few different color variations, and I'm not sure which version this recent release by Yves Renaud is based upon, or if he took liberties too and had the color done based on a few of the varieties that he saw. Likewise, I'm not sure if the Tarot Classic creator did the same thing, if they based it on an actual incarnation of the Gassmann, or if they just used the Gassmann as their springboard and colored it however they wished. It's clear that although the poses, the postures, and the details are extremely similar, that the faces were reworked. And so it does appear as though the Tarot Classic deck had been redrawn, but based very closely on the Gassmann. So right out of the gate, we see with the Magician the very luscious cyan color of the table that the Müller Schaffhouse deck, the Tarot Classic deck, has. It's quite different than the plain table, the plain white colored table. But we do see some very, bright and happy colors in the Gassmann nonetheless. Here we have the High Priestess in one and the Papess in the other. And again, way different color choices. Although the detail is very, very, very similar. One of the things I really like about the Gassmann is this very bright and happy green, which you don't see that often. And we'll notice that in both this is the Empress. It made me think of something to say about the High Priestess and the Pope. You'll notice that, the difference in color really makes quite a difference in the way, an image looks. And this is true of any works of art where there are color variations. There are other tarot decks that use the same images, but the artists who reproduce them use different colors. This is obvious in a deck like the Fischetti, right? Tarot of the Master. It's been republished a few times in modern days, and each time the publisher has chosen a different color palette. This could be because in some cases the original sheets were black and white drawings, and so the color becomes subjective. But it could be known what the colors were, and it could also have been a fact that a deck may have been reproduced a number of times using a variety of colors. So we don't really know what the case is in these instances. But we do know that we do know that the Tarot Classic was based at least on the Gassmann, and that side by side, you can see that most of the details are very similar, if not exactly the same. It does appear as though the faces were redrawn in the Tarot Classic. So whereas the Tarot Classic really has a propensity for that beautiful cerulean blue, the Gassmann deck seems to share that same propensity, but with a green, with this really bright and happy green. And oh my gosh, I have a story. The other day when I received the Renaud Gassmann in the mail, I knew I was going to do a side-by-side comparison with the Tarot Classic, so I pulled it out and I put it in order. And after I thought I put it in order, I went through the cards and I found that the Justice card was missing from my Tarot Classic deck. Now, anyone who is a tarot collector, or anyone, period, whether you only have one deck or 300, you know that it's a crisis when a card is missing. I mean, oh my gosh, right? So I went into a panic and I went through the trump cards over and over and over and over, and I was sure that it was not in the trump cards. So I had already begun the process of trying to find a new replacement card for it. And given that this deck, the Tarot Classic, has been out of print, I don't know how long, I knew it would be a challenge. And I won't go so far as to say that it ruined my day, but it really put a damper on it. And then finally, a little voice in my head said, check out the court cards. Maybe you accidentally mistook it for a queen when you were placing it in order. And sure enough, there it was. I mistook it for the Queen of Swords, and so I put it in with the Queen of Swords, which I already had in order. But oh, what a relief. So anybody who can, understand my panic can appreciate that little story. But happily, I didn't lose any cards, and I still had my original Justice and the Hermit. The Wheel. And you could see by the depth that the Gassmann by Yves Renaud is considerably taller than the Tarot Classic. It's done on, more quality art paper, higher quality rather. I love the lion. And here we see I guess it's a Swiss influence of the hanged man, not only in profile, but wearing the garment of, I guess, either a Swiss or German soldier. I love the sallow color of the skeleton in death here. That color appears on the foliage of the Gassmann. I love his red hot joints too. Temperance. Look at the contrast between, the complementary colors in the Gassmann. If you recall, we're diluting the effects of alcohol with water, so we're kind of, mixing two unlike things together. And I think I don't know if that was a deliberate choice in the color here, but that kind of reinforces the concept for me when I see it represented this way. The devil and his minions. Many decks, will put the English term on a deck rather than the French or Spanish or Italian or wherever the deck, originated. In fact, this is a Swiss deck, right? But it has French words. So even this deck has done that. But I think there's something really beautiful about the original language. But I imagine that the Swiss deck was really emulating, you know, the French or the Piedmontese style by the time this deck was being created. And so they used the language most associated with the deck. Again, we have the luscious blue in the Tarot Classic. And in these particular decks, they have the Fool at the end of the Trump sequence. So I just left it that way for the purpose of the video. Now there's a very energetic Ace of Batons. There's so much going on here. We have, you know, a hand being, you know, coming from nowhere, but, you know, with starburst rays around it, you know, and all this fruit and all these, you know, branches. Oh, so pretty. And here, it reminds me a bit of the Burdell. Ah, and it looks like this might be upside down. I'm not sure. The flower is a little different on these. So the color palette for sure is quite different for the suit of batons between these two decks. I kind of like the, you know, the Tarot Classic. I've always liked the color choices of the Tarot Classic. Whereas the Gassmann is a little bit more standard. And now the quartz, quite different. The pattern that is very clear in this Tarot Classic is the same in the Gassmann, but because it has such a heavy dark blue, you can't see it. You can't see the detail, but it is there. So the blue in the Gassmann is more heavily used in the court cards for the suit of batons, whereas with the Tarot Classic it was green. And now we move on to the suit of swords. Oh, notice that the hand that delivers the sword is coming from the opposite direction, and in fact the whole image has been reversed, which is an interesting thing. I don't know if when the Tarot Classic was created they decided to have all the aces in one direction. Let's see what the original ace, let's see what the ace was for the Ace of Batons. Yep, the Ace of Batons is also coming from this direction in the in the Tarot Classic. So maybe that was why. Maybe they wanted a consistency. I don't know. But it's not that way in the original Gassmann. And notice too that the order that it was received, that I received it, I didn't change it, was that the odd swords face up until we get to the 10. And then they face downward. I also noticed that in the suit of swords of the Tarot Classic, that the swords themselves are on the pinkish side rather than red. And the quartz. Of the suit of swords. Again, I just love the green choice in the Gassmann. It brightens the whole deck up. It's just so, just so pretty. And maybe my camera doesn't show it as well as it appears. And again, all the detail that's present in the Tarot Classic is present in the Gassmann. It's just that it's not as easy to see because in some cases the red or the blue or whatever color just goes over it completely, and it's not used to detail the shapes. But the clothing in the Tarot Classic just seems much more detailed because each individual shape was colored in individually in this one. Now, I'll tell you, one of the favorite things about this deck for me, about the Tarot Classic, was the Ace of Cups. And also in this deck, it is also, I just love the representation of the Ace of Cups. It's so different. And the suit of cups is particularly pretty in both of these decks. You'll notice that the inside of the, well, I guess it could be either the inside, that view of the cup, or it could be that the cup has a red cap. I guess it depends on how you see it. Certainly here in the Tarot Classic, it almost looks like a domed top, whereas it's a lot more ambiguous in the cups of the Gassmann. Maybe when it was redrawn by the Tarot Classic artist, he or she perceived the top as more of a closed cap, rather than as maybe possibly looking at the inside view of the cup. I don't know if that would necessarily change a person's interpretation. It's possible that it would. And again, we have a reversal. We have the cups at the top of the 10 of Cups facing in opposite direction. And the Knight of Cups is decidedly a blonde in the Gassmann. And there's, he's a dark-haired individual in the Tarot Classic. And the last suit, the suit of coin. We have the Schaffhouse imprint and the Gassmann. And so it seems as though, oh, never mind. I was going to make an observation, but I don't think it's true. What a pretty 4 of coins. It almost reminds me of like chandelier, or horns blowing and so obviously, I should have pointed this out earlier, but I think you've picked up on it. The Gassmann reproduction or facsimile, I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure how many, if Renaud made color choices himself or if he based it on a specific incarnation of the deck. But the size is a little bit different. The Renaud deck is a hair thicker and quite a bit taller. And also, as it lays on the table, there's a height difference. But all the details are present. It's just that the coloration is just different between the two. But whoever redrew the Tarot Classic did so with a careful eye to the Gassmann. They reworked the faces, that's for sure. But other than that, they're very similar. You see this knight is a tad bit more handsome than that knight. And that is the case with all the faces. And there we have it. So I hope this has been instructive to you, and I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, friends, peace, stay safe, and be well.